All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first, probably at the library, book club author Q&A. That sounds like such a fancy title. So this month we had Paullett Golden as our book of the month. Here's Paul. What's that? Oh, I could be like Brady Bunch. Here is Paullett. So as you know, if you've seen my YouTube channel before, Paulett's been on a few other videos. We love to chat, and I'm so excited that she's here to actually answer your guys' questions about the book. So if you are on with us live at any time, you can always post a comment, and then we can see it on the side. Hopefully it'll come up fairly quickly. And Paullett could answer your questions in real time. I'm sure you wouldn't mind answering if anybody wanted to post anything if they're watching this later.
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, and you could always answer it at another time. We can do another video if there's more questions that come up and that sort of thing. So first off, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm quite honored.
Yeah, and thank you for all your contribution to the Facebook page. As we were reading this month, it was so much fun to be able to interact with you and see what inspired you a little bit as you were writing the book, and have you comment on stuff.
The interaction, I thought that was a lot of fun because a reader would post a question or an idea or why did this happen? Or like, how did, and you had some really nice little posts that you would jump in there with, how letters were sent, how were they able to send letters and who paid postage and they had, historical questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to chat about that. And I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun. I was a little bit nervous that it might be kind of, I would say, intimidating to have the author sort of eavesdropping in the conversation, like, oh, I can't be honest, but there are some people with some very honest comments. So yeah, so I thought that worked out really well.
I'm pretty sure you would agree that all authors appreciate honesty. You might not want brutal thoughts, but as a writer, I know it talks about you always looking to grow as you're writing, and that honesty helps you with feedback.
We even got into a little bit of a conversation on the group about beta reading. And, what is a beta reader? What does a beta reader do? And there were some folks saying, well, I don't know, maybe I want to be a beta reader. Because they had these ideas like, well, what if the character did this? Well, what if the character did that? It's like, well, if you're a beta reader, you can pose that to the author and the author might be able to say, that's a pretty good idea. Why didn't I think of that?
That was something I had never knew that side of writing. Basically this year, it was something that I learned. I just assumed that the author had this story in their head and they wrote it and here you go. But it's really fascinating to see this sort of behind the scenes working of author beta reader relationship. And even though you might not take the advice, that really gives you something else to play off of and think through.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Things you don't think about. And I won't necessarily say like plot holes, but more like character reactions or character responses, or even off the scene things that might happen that you're not thinking of because you're thinking of the big picture, and the reader's kind of stuck in those little details as they're going along for the ride. So they'll catch some of those fun things that you just don't think of because you're still on the big picture. Right. It's nice, and then you're like, I can add that. I can do that.
Yeah. Or you're like, no, this is my book. It's happening the way I want it to happen. You're going to read it.
Oh, no. I have definitely added scenes. I've deleted scenes. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff from beta reader recommendations, where they'll say something like, but I really want this shopping scene. Why is there not a shopping scene? Why would I have a shopping scene? And then they'll explain why they want it. I'm like, oh, okay. I wouldn't have thought. Here we go. Here goes the shopping scene.
Yeah. I think I was actually just reading the comments from the beta reader discussion. So if I remember, we'll get to one of the suggestions that was brought up and see why you didn't add that into the book or what your thoughts were on that. So this month, I guess we haven't said yet, we read The Earl and the Enchantress, which was, yes, I have my copy here. I also have a copy on my Kindle. I love the purple, by the way. I'm seeing kind of a comeback of purple. So pretty. Oh, we could actually talk about one of the first questions, or a question on the list was what inspired cover art for the Earl and the Enchantress?
Okay. Well, this is definitely a collaborative effort. This is not me with, necessarily a vision. My big request, my big want was I didn't want to have a face on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing, wrong with faces on covers, but I have this thing where when I pick up a book and there's a face on the cover, that's what I assume that the hero or the heroine look like. So when I start reading and it's like, oh, the hero has blonde hair, and I'm looking at the cover going, no, he very much has black hair. And then it I don't know, it just kind of grinds a little bit. And so it's like, I don't want somebody to have that face. And then let's say it's, I don't know, a round face, and you like heart-shaped faces instead, or you like long faces, and you look at a round face, that's not attractive. Well, I didn't want a face.
Right.
So that was really my big criteria, is pose the person in such a way that there's not a face. So my cover artist came in, and she's just phenomenal. And she does these art boards where she'll have, different models, and then they'll be in different positions, like sitting or standing or doing whatever, posing. And she'll, before she does the art board, we're going back and forth with like the mood, the synopsis, some of the climactic events, characterization. She wants to get that feel. And that's where the color kind of comes in. She wants the colors to represent the mood. So she'll ask about, special objects, is there a color that's special? And then she'll create the artboard from there. And we might have like, say a splash of green or purple or blue. And I get to pick what I think feels right. And so we go back and forth. And then that ends up coming up with the backdrop. Because if you look at the, like behind our little model here, there's like a wallpaper. Sort of like a leafy wallpaper. And that's all part of our conversation too, is what is that wallpaper going to look like?
Oh, wow.
And I wanted something a little bit, nature driven, a little bit chaotic, a little, like you're standing in a forest, because that's exactly what this character would be doing. She would be out in nature, out in a meadow. So I wanted that kind of feel. So yeah, we go through all of that to get just the right feel. But it began with, I don't want a face.
And how long does the process typically take from start to finish to create the cover art?
Thankfully, not actually very long, because she and I just jive. Awesome. And I think it's all about communication. I've seen processes where, the author and the artist are going back and forth for months and months. They're doing, draft number 1, draft number 2, retake number 1, retake number 2, draft number 3, like that, just constantly back and forth. Right. But I think she and I just really communicate well. I'll say something and she's like, I know just what you mean. And she does.
That's awesome.
And she does. So, anyone who's going to work with an artist, I think would be really clear about what you want, and then also trust in their artistic freedom, but certainly be really clear about what you want.
And you've been with the same cover artist then through all of your books so far?
Yes. So unless she decides one day she wants to wake up and be an astronaut, she's not going anywhere.
Yeah, all your books. Let me see, where are they at? I just rearranged. Oh, here. I'll just grab to show how much they changed though. To your newest book. So we have a face on this. And I was thinking this when you were saying no face. So Dash of Romance, we do see a face, which I think is really interesting that you specifically didn't want the face on there.
With that series.
Yeah, to give that abstractness that the reader could come up with their own idea of what the characters look like. So interesting.
And of course, the only reason I did it for, two reasons. I did it for that series, the Romantic Encounter series. One, I wanted some kind of smoldering gaze on there to be different, to be challenging, to be daring. I dare you to read this.
Yeah.
And 2, because there's not a single hero in there. Since it has since it's an anthology, there's so many heroes.
Right.
Which one is he? So it's so elusive. You can't really say, oh, but the hero doesn't quite fit. Well, which hero?
Right. Keeping us guessing. And hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to add in any comments or questions as we go along if you think of something that you want to ask Paullett. Okay, and sorry for anyone that can hear our birds. We have competing birds. I can hear mine getting louder and louder.
So they're talking to each other on the screen.
Yes. Do you want to tell them a bit about your bird as we get to know you?
I think we're okay. They can save that for my author Facebook pages and Instagram pages. Okay. I can post all the pictures, but I think we both have parakeets.
Yeah, you have a female.
Yes.
And I have 2 males. So I think they're like having their own conversations back and forth. All right, let's dive into the questions then, because we have quite a few. So we'll hopefully get through all of these. So first question is, are the characters based on real people?
Not specifically. The ideas of them often come from some particular person I've met, or a characteristic of a particular person I met, maybe even some kind of behavior pattern or response pattern will be based. And I think we've talked about this in previous interviews as well, where I'll be standing at line at Starbucks and somebody's standing behind me, and there's just something intriguing about them. I might strike up a conversation. We're talking, and the next thing I know, I'm putting you in a book. But what ends up happening is I'll have that sort of character base, that foundation, and then as I start getting to know the character within the book, they create a life form of their own, and they have their own goals, their own desires. The look changes, everything ends up changing. So even if I had a foundation, that person would never recognize themselves because they've metamorphed into something new and different.
What catches your attention most? Is it mannerisms, speech patterns, accents, physical characteristics, or just take a little bit of everything?
All of the above, and sometimes it's even their story. Like Colonel in the Enchantress, Duncan's story was 100% inspired by a fellow I knew who was part of a club that I belonged to, and he had a spinal hematoma, and he had gone through a recovery process. They thought he'd never walk again. He had to go through physical therapy. He still can't, to this day, he still can't feel below his knees. And learning to walk when you can't feel, originally you can't feel, below the hips. And then eventually, below the knees, learning to walk like that was really challenging. And he would just talk about his story. Like, this is how I learned to walk. This is what I did. These are the struggles. And I'm like, why aren't, like, you need to be a hero, because this is fantastic. And it was life changing. 1 minute he was thinking, I'm going to get married. And the next minute he's like, that's it. My life's over. How can I get married when, I've got these new issues that I don't know how to deal with. And he's really, pieced his life together through hard work and determination. And I'm like, you're a hero. Now, there's no resemblance between that person and, say, Duncan, the hero in the story, but the tale of, what happened to him and how he was able to recover, how he was able to walk again, all of that is very, very much like parallel. If he read Colonel, he would say, hey, that happened to me. I wonder if I was the inspiration. But the character himself would be totally different. So it just depends. I might find somebody that's got a funny little, tick. And I'm going, oh, that's got to be it. Like Walter. Okay. And I can't even remember who inspired. He's probably, again, at a line in Starbucks. How often do I go to Starbucks? But like, he's got this thing where he rubs the back of his neck when he gets nervous, and he's thinking, and he's always rubbing the back of his neck. And I saw someone do that, and it's like, perfect. I'm stealing your tick.
Yeah, that's amazing. They just kind of come together and take on their own unique form.
They do.
It's so much fun. All right, next question that we had is, what inspired the Arthurian legend connection, and is everything that Sebastian said in the book correct to the legend?
Oh, God.
That's a question here.
Unpack that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So start with what inspired you to want to add it to the book.
Gosh. Okay. We'll back up for a moment. And then we'll go forward. So back up. We're looking at 2003, maybe. I took a class on Arthurian legends at King's College in London, and as part of the class, we got to tour all the locations that were associated with the history as well as the fiction, as well as some of the legends, like anything and everything. Like if Arthur appeared somewhere, we went to that location and we kind of explored what the history says versus what the fiction says versus what the legend says, whatever. We really went through that. And there were quite a few. Ronald Hutton was one of our speakers. We've got quite a few, Arthurian legend specialists that were speakers. And it just really struck a chord with me. And at the time, Tintagel, which was originally Trevenna, where Lisbeth in the story lives, Tintagel was supposed to be the birthplace of Arthur. And I was just really moved by the whole location. Now it's a little bit like Disneyland, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But at the time, nobody went there. So I mean, we had the whole place to ourselves. It was just stunning. I loved it, and I'm like, I want to come back here. I want to live here. I want to do everything here. So when I started writing the story, it's like my character is going to live there because that's sort of my dream. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to figure out, well, where does Sebastian live? And it was complete coincidence. You will not believe me. It was complete mind-blowing coincidence. Like, you want to talk about fate. So I was trying to figure out where Sebastian was from. And it's like, well, I want him to be from Northumberland. That's where my family's from. And I kind of want him to be roundabout where my family, I mean, it was all like, what am I familiar with? I don't want to write about something that I've never been to, a place I've never been to, what's familiar to me. And I kind of stumbled on, figuring out where along the coast there I wanted. I kind of stumbled on Dunstanburgh Castle, and I thought, well, that sounds like a good location. Yeah, sure. Let's read a little bit more about it. And then I started looking into it, and it was rumored to be, the death place of Arthur. And now that was before the Mallory fiction, and Mallory actually, makes it very clear that it was Glastonbury. But Mallory is also writing a fiction. He's writing historical fiction. So there was a big difference between, say, Geoffrey of Monmouth. I probably just massacred that name. His history versus, say, Mallory's fiction. There's a big difference. For history, everything implies that it could have been, the death place could have been in Dunstable. And I was like, no, I did not randomly pick off the map the one place that was associated with Arthurian legend. There's no way. So it ended up, it had no purpose in the book. There was no connection in the book, except for she lived in Tintagel because I liked Tintagel. It was like, I like this place. Let's put her in it. And when that connection happened, I was like, that's it. This somehow has to all focus on it, and it all has to take place. So the things that I think the second part of that was that how truthful is some of the stuff that Sebastian says. The majority of that I got from the class that I took and the studies that I did and the speakers that came in. I mean, it's all theory. It's all speculation. It's all, what's true and what's not. But it's amazing how much history is out there that combines, it's not just, say, a British writer writing history of Arthur. You also have, Welsh writers writing the history of Arthur. You also, and there's overlaps. There's a lot of overlaps. So I'm not an Arthurian scholar by any stretch of the imagination. I took a class. I mean, I'm not an Arthurian legend scholar. So as far as I know, everything that Sebastian was saying is pretty on point. But I wouldn't, grain of salt.
So did that inspire Sebastian's reaction then to the connection in the book? Was that like mirroring you as you're doing this research?
It really was. I had to step away. I was like, no, this is too weird. I'm going to have to step. I'm trying to write a book here. What is all this art? I have to step away. This is weird.
Yeah, that was funny. I loved that part when he was so just jumping ahead that it was just this trick being played on him. And that was like, I think that's the first point that he kind of pushes her away because he's like feeling really drawn to her. And then it's like, wait a second, this is too good to be true, because that was such a integral part of who he was and reshaping himself into this new man that he wanted to be.
Right. It's like, this has to be a joke. This has to be a joke. And well, okay. So from a reader's standpoint, and you see a character react like this, and you're thinking, well, this doesn't seem like much of a coincidence. Like, I don't get it. Why would he think this is a joke? Like, well, what do you experience when that happens? Like, do you strangle the book, or do you go with the flow? Do you see it? What?
I don't know if I read the same way other people read historical romance, but for me, I love seeing the parallels to, like, people are just people, whether they're set in Regency era, Georgian era, Victorian, like whatever it is, people are the same. And so when I see that, I kind of think of like, what if you're on almost this like blind date sort of situation, and somebody, like, you have this really weird, I don't know, like you've got this really specific collection of something, and then the person just happens to be like, oh, and by the way, I love collecting, these rare puzzles on Jane Austen. Like, I don't know, make something up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Kind of like, whoa, like, did you stalk me on social media or something beforehand? Because this is too good to be true. So that's kind of how I take things, and like looked at it as like, if you were in modern day and somebody brings up this really specific thing that you enjoy, then you're kind of like, let's take a step back here. Like, maybe did you talk to my friends, that set me up, like that sort of thing. So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if everybody else reads it that way, but I really enjoy the psychology of the characters and looking at how they're thinking.
Okay, now we've got a question
for you. Do you think you'll ever write the legend itself?
Ooh, in terms of Arthur?
I think so.
Not likely. I don't feel well equipped enough to do that. Now, I mean, if we're talking fiction, and let's say I followed the footsteps of Mallory and the other authors who have done that, it's possible I could have a King Arthur of my own. It seems like it would be quite the undertaking, though. Even then, even if I'm doing kind of like a fan fiction, it just seems almost intimidating. Like could I take a character like that and do him justice? I think I might be a little out of my league, but I wouldn't put anything past me.
Never say never.
I love challenges, so.
Okay, next question is, I thought this was a good question. Why didn't Sebastian heal himself from his demons before their marriage? So I think it also had kind of said, like, was it love that helped him? Like, why didn't he conquer all these demons beforehand?
I think the same reason why a lot of us keep our fears buried, keep our weaknesses buried, keep anything that we have, skeletons, that we keep the skeletons in our closet. There's a fear. There's a fear of facing the demons. There's a fear of I might not recover. There's a fear of I can't handle it. I'm going to go mad. I'm going to hate myself in the end. There's nothing that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to conquer. There's nothing to battle there. It's I don't know, it's difficult to do it alone. And he needed some kind of motivation. Like what is his motivating factor to face the demons? And if he doesn't have a motivating factor, it's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. It's not worth the personal trauma. I mean, and you think about people that see therapists, like it takes a lot to finally say, I'm going to go do this. If you hang on to all of the baggage and all the memories and whatever it is, the trauma, you hang on to it and you're like, I don't want to see a therapist because what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to go through anything. And it takes a lot of strength to finally say, okay, I'm going to go and talk about this. And then you have to, it all has to come out, and they're going to ask you questions. Oh Lord. I mean, it's just, it's intense. And it's just too much. It's just too much for some people to deal with. And I think for him, especially since he was dealing with child abuse and he was dealing with abuse that he thought that he deserved, he was a bad child. He deserved it. Not that they had therapists, but being able to, for him to say, yeah, I want to go and sit on a couch and talk about this to some stranger. Like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to remember that. I just want to block it. I want to block it. So there was no point for him to explore it. It was better to just push it down. Just keep pushing it down. And I think his worry was, since he felt responsible and he felt that he deserved it, why would a bad person deserve love? And why would a bad person want to put somebody through a life with them? Like, one day you're going to realize that I'm not such a great person. If I follow in my father's footsteps, there's a lot of fear. So it's easier to push away love and to push down all of that than to have to explore it. So he needed a motivation. He needed a reason. And love wasn't even it, because love was easy. Right. I mean, it's easy just to, sounds kind of strange, but for him, it was easy to just fall in love and be with her and push everything else away. And it wasn't until, he risked losing her that he was like, if I don't face my demons, I'm going to lose her. So the only way that I'm going to be able to have love and have everything that I appreciated and wanted, is to finally, talk to the therapist. Right. Which his therapist is basically the mirror, but there's no motivation. It's frightening. What if you realize you are the terrible person you think you are?
Right. And for him, it wasn't just, there's like levels of a bad person. Like, he was thinking he was a murderer. Like, this isn't just like I told some lies, or I was dishonest, or I carelessly treated something. Like, he is thinking in his mind, I murdered my sister. And I think that reality starts to hit him when he thinks about family. Because I think at one point he says, like, when he's talking through when he wants to tell her all of this, like, she's not even going to want any future children to be around me. Like, he's
he's irresponsible.
It's not just like, I haven't been a good person.
and there's that, the fear of responsibility. Like, it doesn't even matter how old he was when it happened. He, in his mind, he was responsible. He was the man. He was responsible for the well-being and safety of the women around him. And so, yeah, imagine him having children. If she knows the truth, she's not going to want me, looking after the children. What if I'm like, hey kids, let's go down to the beach? Like, she's never going to trust me. He would never trust himself. He would be so afraid to look away, so afraid to do anything. Don't go into the water. I mean, he would, because he felt responsible.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you and I have talked about before, is really appreciating a romance where the two people, they don't rely on the other person to complete them, but together they improve each other. And that's what makes a good romance. It kind of makes me think of, I was telling my husband over the weekend, the thing that I love about you most, I also hate the most about you, because I love his honesty, and he totally took it in stride. But I love his honesty when I ask him a question about something, and like, Sebastian having that mirror of her confronting him and forcing him to make that change. And that's what you appreciate in a partner, that reality that they give you, because you don't want anything sugar-coated, but also he's like, I'm not ready for this. Why are you forcing me into this situation at this time? But knowing it's going to make him better in the end. So, it's a love-hate sort of thing.
So when you're reading, say a book like this, what is it that helps you relate to a character, especially if you have, say that love-hate relationship with facing the honest truth and what helps you relate?
The books that I relate to the most are I really enjoy ones when I see similarities to my personality or my husband's personality. Those are the ones that I really take to, and I do feel like breaking that stigma of romance books being trashy reads. I think we can learn from them. I really take of like, how did they react to that situation? Is there something in my own life that I could use that little bit of how that character handled it to mirror in myself, to improve? So again, like, I don't know, maybe I'm reading them on a weird level, but I try to take them all as self-reflection, or even if it's a character that I might not see myself in, I try to I like thinking it through the next day of how could they handle it differently, or what could they have done, or how would I see that differently with my personality compared to how theirs was. But I'd be curious to see what other people think, but I would venture to guess that we enjoy reading characters similar to ourselves the most. What are your thoughts on that? Do you enjoy reading characters you see a little bit of yourself in, or totally not you at all?
I think not necessarily me, but just relatable. So if I'm reading a character, and like you said, like you see your husband in it, if I read a character and I see elements of friends of mine, where I'm like, oh, this reminds me of, you know, whoever, Joe or Bob, you know, this reminds me of so and so, then it helps me have more insight into the character and feel a little bit more invested in their journey.
Yeah.
So if I can relate, then I want to know what happens to them, and I want something good to happen to them. Or let's say if they're a villain, then I'm like, yeah, you're going to get your comeuppance. You know, you remind me of, you know, so and so bad person. Yeah, I want them to get their comeuppance. You know, there's an investment there. Now, if I can see a little bit of myself in them, which doesn't happen often, but when I can, it's an interesting journey, a whole new kind of investment. Although there is that conflict of, it's like, okay, look, you seem so much like me, but you're not doing anything that I would do. You know, and then you want to strangle them.
Choose your own adventure romance novels. Oh, amazing!
I've been thinking about doing that.
Awesome.
So now, on the same topic, when you were reading the Earl, were there any characters in that you could, you know, relate to or feel invested in, or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say Lisbeth was the one that I identified with the most. Without getting too much into detail, at a certain point in my life, I kind of paved my own way. Her letter writing portion of kind of like throwing off convention and just deciding like this is what she's gonna do really spoke to me at that part. And I don't know, there was parts of her I feel like she appreciated tradition, and like, you know, going to take care of the families, and that sense of community was really important. But she also had these ideas of, this is what I want my life to look like, and this is the way that I'm going to get there. And it might not be the traditional path, but I'm going to create my own idea of what's traditional to me, and for her family, as she and Sebastian. And then as we see them in later books, even growing, of they create their new normal, and that normal is comfortable for them. So I really took to her, and I think that was what first drew me to your series, was I felt like they were just a couple that I understood them. They spoke to me. I related to the way that they interacted a lot. And I really just wanted to be in that library.
I know. It's like, I'll marry you for the library.
The library, the castle, I'll say yes.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so what gave you the idea to write her? We talked a bit about Sebastian, but what really brought her to life for you?
Oh, wow.
Because all of your females are so different. When we get to the second book, Charlotte's like a whole nother creation / monster at times than Elizabeth.
I think, it actually started with her independence. And there was the struggle for her. Now she's in a position where she doesn't have to marry. And that's a situation that we don't often see, where we end up seeing sort of, pig-headed independent women where they want their independence, but they have no means of survival. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you, but you're going to have to, suck it up and find a way. But she was financially, her family was financially well off enough that she could make the choice to marry or not marry. And I think living in a rural area and not having to deal with society, it wasn't a big deal for her. I'll just remain single. And there's some allusions in there to her having received proposals before, but they were like as nice, and there was nothing wrong with the guy. They were all really nice guys, but none of them really saw her. None of them really appreciated her, and she was an intelligent woman. She liked to study. She liked to read. She did her father's ledgers and account books. She had a mind. She was very opinionated, and very outspoken. And those are the elements that would have had to change. Those are the elements that wouldn't have been appreciated. So it's like, you're a really nice guy, but I can see how it's going to go. We're going to get married and you're going to tell me to shut up.
Right.
You're going to say no more account books. This isn't a woman's work. This isn't a woman's place. And especially take her to a party and she starts talking politics. Mm. And it's not, and it wouldn't be bad of the husband to be embarrassed by that or not to want her to talk politics, because at the time, for a woman to be sitting in a parlor with guests and talking politics, I mean, that she might as well have been talking about her bathroom habits. I mean, that's it was that is rude. That is uncomfortable for everybody. So there was a lot to unpack, with her that would keep her from marrying. But that's originally what drew me to her character, and what helped me create that character is I wanted an independent woman, but a woman who was independent in a way that marriage really would just ruin her. It would destroy her spirit. She's a kind of person who needs her select group of little friends. And she can talk politics if she wants. She can talk books if she wants. She can talk, whatever that she wants, and they understand her. And outside of that, I don't need to talk to those people. She says, I don't need to deal with those people. I deal with my own little select group. So in 100% her independence, which is a different kind of independence than we see from, say Lilith and future books, or Mary. I mean, it's a completely different kind of independence.
Mm. And I think her father even acknowledges that he feels like he did her a disservice by allowing her these freedoms. And now he's created this woman that is so independent and doesn't want to get married. And I think he kind of regrets that a little bit. But I think, she also wants him to understand not to regret it, because it made her who she is. And she's happy for that.
Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry that you don't fit. I'm sorry that I made someone who doesn't fit anywhere.
Right. I really enjoy the fact that the sisters are so different, and I think we see that a lot of times in families. You meet people and you're like, how did you grow up in the same household together? And I appreciate the fact that they are like, you get that element that she raised her sister. Like her mom and dad raised her, and she had this freedom and hippie-ish lifestyle almost. And then her sister is just the prim and proper, perfect Charlotte. And I think you give the freedom that they both wanted extremely different things out of life, and that was okay for them to both want their own happy ever after out of it. And they,
very different visions.
Yeah. And that's okay. And we all have a different idea of what's the perfect happiness, even, if Elizabeth was okay if she never got married, She was totally fine with that reality. Obviously, it's a romance book, so we want to see her get married and happily ever after. But you really gave her that independent spirit, that she wasn't waiting in life to find this perfect man. She was completely content with who she was before she even found Sebastian.
And it's then becomes a struggle of do I take the leap, because I think I found the perfect man, and what's going to happen if he's not so perfect? You know, I marry him and he changes his tune.
Right. Hi, Alana. So she said, I think it was also balancing their sibling by going to the other extreme. Oh, yes, that's a great point. So there's like a oldest child, youngest child, or like I have one younger. Yeah, so we got the two. One, you get all the rules, and then the baby, you get all the freedoms.
And I think she was Charlotte anyway. Was raised in great part by her Aunt Hazel. So we can see that influence, you know, where Aunt Hazel, being the social butterfly that she is, she knows what's acceptable, she knows what's not. Right. And it's like, I'm going to make sure that I groom this one, you know, to be ready for society and to be ready to experience life the way I experience it. Whereas Elizabeth had been, like you said, you know, raised by her freedom loving, her hippie parents, yeah. And certainly her father after that. And so we see his influence, where she was, I don't want to say manly, but at the time she had more masculine attributes than she did, you know, the feminine, which Charlotte would have had.
Shout out to Aunt Hazel, who had so many people list her as favorite or second favorite in the book. So we did have a question. What is Hazel's story? And can you give us any insight as to when we can expect Hazel's story to be coming?
Oh, no pressure. No pressure. Okay, so confession time. Hazel was never actually slotted to have a book. And she was so loved that I'm like, you can't not have a story. Right. And I think the expectation by some might be, and I could be misreading, but I think the expectation by some might be that we're going to get her story as we know her now. So like a second chance at love, she finds love at an older age, that kind of thing. In actuality, we're going to get her story of when she met her first husband, Walter's dad, when she met Harold, Lord Collingwood. And of course, he wasn't Lord Collingwood when she met him. He was the heir, and he eventually became the Baron. But yeah, so we're going to get her at 17. So I think it's going to be really interesting, because she's not the person we know her to be yet. We see where she was and then how she became that person. But it's still Hazel. So, you know, we're going to read her and be like, oh my gosh, it's still Hazel. But it's that, you know, that young, vibrant, she's not, you know, part of the social world yet, but she's getting there. And yeah, I think people are going to really, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I'm hoping people will really like it. The challenge that might happen is, we know that they're not going to be together until they're 80, 90 years old, because we already know that she's a widow. So we're going to go into her story, and we're going to see this you know, beautiful love story and you know, true love and soulmates and all of this, and we know what's going to happen. But I'm hoping that it'll be a good thing rather than a negative thing, because we never know when things are going to happen, and how many widowers out there, how many widows out there, you know, will doggedly say that was my true love, and we had a love story to, you know, last the ages. And you know, what makes it any more of a love story if we live until 80 or 90 together? What makes it any less of a love story, you know, if someone dies early? So I think it'll be a nice little nod to those relationships, where sometimes love is cut short, but it's no less as grand or glamorous. Now, when we're going to see it is another question. I had these big dreams of getting this out in some point in November. But I'm gonna blame COVID, because that is the thing to do these days, is to blame COVID, and we've been procrastinating. I mean, blame COVID. So I'm looking at the moment a little bit more towards January, but who knows? I could surprise us all, and all of a sudden, bam, it comes out in November. But at the moment, I'm looking a little bit more towards January. The cover reveal should be coming in the next newsletter.
Ooh.
So that's something exciting. So the October newsletter, we should have a cover reveal for her story.
Awesome.
But I think it'll be fun. And yeah, I don't want to say too much, but Hazel and I have been spending a great deal of time together. So.
Yeah, I think everyone that has read Hazel is excited for her story, and I think because it's Hazel, we expect the unexpected, because Hazel has her own plans and she does her own thing. So we will very excitedly read her book and whatever she decides to do in it.
She definitely has her own, and of course matchmaking always factors into it, because what does she do best?
Exactly. Okay, I want to make sure we don't miss okay, so what inspired, jump back to the book. What inspired the twist ending? And we could say spoiler alert if you haven't read the book yet and you could skip ahead a little bit. We'll give you the thumbs up when we're done talking about the twist ending.
Well, I won't mention what the twist is.
Okay.
So we won't actually have any spoilers. No, the twist took me completely by surprise. Absolutely, totally by surprise. I have no idea where that came from. I had my own vision. I had my own theories. I didn't know. I wanted to surprise myself. And so I'm plugging along, and I have the basic, like, the arc is set, the plot is set, everything's outlined. I don't know what the reveal is, but everything's set. And so I'm working up to that point, and I have my own theories of what it could be. I think, and I'll go ahead and say this theory, because it's not a spoiler other than to say this theory isn't it. If you have a theory, if you're reading it now and this is your theory, yeah, it's not right. But when I was writing it, I actually was thinking, did he have a daughter? And is he haunted by the death of his daughter? Did he possibly have a wife and a daughter, and maybe something happened to them and he's haunted by that, or he feels responsible for both of their deaths? And yeah, I had all these theories that were dealing with a former family, former children, something of that nature. And that's where I was headed. That's what I was thinking. That was my whole plan. And then I don't know what happened. Like, he said it and I was like, oh, I typed it and I'm like, what is that? What did I just read? What did I just type? What happened? Go back and read it and I'm like, I didn't, okay, all right, we're gonna go with it. So then, went with it. And it wasn't until after, I finished writing the tale. And, as they say often, whoever says it, whoever they are, the memes of social media, as they say, the first draft is you telling yourself the story. And so that was basically somewhere, my subconscious mind told me a story. And I was like, wow, this is shocking. So after I finished it, then I had to go back and put in some, now that I knew what was going on, I had to go back and put in like little hints, little more hints. And I even added, and this was actually a late edition, and I waffled between should I do it or not. I even added in Lisbeth questioning him, have you ever been married? And do you ever have children?
Right.
And that just kind of like, no. No, not to say he couldn't be lying, but no. So I went ahead and added that in. But I had to go back and fill in some of those hints. And there's even a conversation she overhears where there's references to children. But that it's still so weird that it could be his, it could be siblings, it could, we don't really know. But I was shocked. It was not planned.
Yeah. It was, and it plays out in such a way that it led to so much more happening in the series. That's what's so fascinating about it being a surprise to you, because I would have thought you had this all written down and you knew where you were going with it. And
no,
I'm glad you didn't do the first idea, because I do not like surprise family, surprise children, surprise wives. Like, that is not the way to endear yourself to me. So I'm glad you didn't do that.
You finished reading The Colonel?
Well,
You're like, don't break my heart. I'm trusting you on this.
I have, but Sebastian holds a special place in my heart, and if he would have done that to me, I don't know if I could have forgiven him.
No, I don't have any surprise children in any of my books. Not even Colonel.
Oh, that reminds me of Colonel. I remember texting you when I was reading that part. It's all coming back to me now. I was ready to throw that book out the window. I was but I had faith that you would not break my heart. So I will always keep reading when you're dedicated to it. So, okay, time is like always rapidly getting away from us. But I did want to ask you, so when you were writing Sebastian and Elizabeth's story, did you already have your plan written out for the second book in the series, the third book in the series? I mean, because the first two tie so closely together with time frames overlapping. So was that one big picture that you had in your mind?
No. I'd like to say that I planned that well, but no. Okay, so if I confess this, don't think too badly. There's gonna be people watching who are like, oh, unfollow. Here's my big confession. So when I wrote Earl, I wrote Drake as a very obnoxious character, and I couldn't stand him. Absolutely couldn't stand him. Couldn't stand Charlotte either that much. They were, I don't know, they were like the Ken and Barbie visions in my head, and I'm like, you know, all the same. And then I thought, you know, I should do Charlotte's story after marriage, and she's widowed.
Oh my goodness.
And she finds true love after marrying Drake.
It wasn't true love?
And this was, I was early on in Earl, like really early. I think this was when Elizabeth met Drake. I was trying to figure out, who is Drake? Well, where is this going to go? And I was like, I can do Charlotte's story. Okay, I'll put her with this obnoxious guy, and then she'll find love later. That was my vision very early on. By the time I got to the end of Earl, though, I was like, you know, Drake has somehow found this little niche in my heart. He's not going to get killed off. I'm not going to put, you know, a Game of Thrones twist on him. I want to figure out his story, and I want to figure out their love story, because there's something going on behind the curtain, and I don't know what it is, and I got to figure it out. But I definitely want to know more about Drake. He's going to stick around. So it wasn't until I finished writing Earl that I decided to do Charlotte's story with Drake intact and follow the love trail.
Yeah.
And then I did, and I was very, very pleased by it.
I love that story.
And almost a challenge, you know, for me. Like, can I do this? Can I turn two characters that are so obnoxious that we don't like into characters that we end up liking? And but originally I had a very different vision. You know, Charlotte was going to marry, I don't know, Bob or something. I don't know.
I am shocked you were going to kill him off. I mean, like, I don't even know how to respond to that. And when you read the first book, I think you're kind of feeling the same way. You're like, this. I love even when Charlotte keeps telling Elizabeth to go talk to Drake, and she's like, okay, this is like plan Z on the list here. Like, there is no way I'm going to talk to this guy unless I have no other options. And since Drake is a Gemini, I totally got his character, and I am so happy that you decided to write him, because I think that's like one of the, I'm like horrible at reading series in order anyways, but I think he did an amazing job of really not just showing that he doesn't change himself. I don't want to I'm not going to give too much away, but a lot of you see they reform themselves throughout.
Oh yeah.
He pretty much stays true to what he is, but you understand all the layers going on underneath that really help you understand the true Drake. So well done. I think that's an amazing book. And I hope you will take this as an amazing compliment. To anyone that this was your first book of yours that they have read, I will say your writing is more and more amazing with each book that you write. Dash of Romance, Paulett's newest, can we call it a book-length novella? Can we just call it what it is?
It is officially novel-length. It is. To be a novel, it's 70,000, and it's at I think about 75,000.
So if you're looking for a really lighthearted, forget what's going on in the rest of the world type of book, I highly recommend reading A Dash of Romance. And if you were reading The Earl and the Enchantress, this was Paulett's debut novel. So stick with the whole series and you will see her transformation as a writer, which is a compliment. I love this book. I'm saying that you truly take your writing seriously and you aim to improve, and you just get better and better with every book that you write.
Well, it's all because of the reviews. I read the reviews and realize my sins and I fix them.
Not your sins.
Well, I don't know. If you read Earl, you might say pacing is a sin.
Oh my goodness. Let me just make sure. We'll end on this question or wherever it takes us. That I wanted to make sure I get it. What pushed you to finally decide to publish The Earl and the Enchantress, and why did you decide to go indie?
Oh, that's supposed to be a super quick one? Oh, God.
It doesn't have to be quick. I'm just saying it's our final question we will end on. Why did you put The Earl and the Enchantress out into the world? What gave you the motivation? We can always save the indie for another day.
Okay. Wow. I'll do like succinct indie. I can do it. Okay, so well, the writing of it, and I actually had no intentions of even publishing. It all just began with I've always wanted to write, and I have never done it. It's that dream you have that you're going to do, and you never do it. And so if you've read, if any viewers have read any. Any previous interviews, you'll know that I was diagnosed with a rather aggressive stage of cancer, and I was looking at a ticking time clock, and I'm like, I don't this is it. There's no, I'll write when I retire. I'll write next year. I'll write in 10 years. I'll write after. There was none of that. It was like this is it. So I can just go down being depressed, or I can go down having accomplished my goal. And so I started writing, and I wrote honestly as fast as I could. I would, because I'm like, tomorrow could be it, the next day could be it. I've got to write fast. So I wrote as fast as I could, and my thought process was, I'm not going to live long enough to see it published. So publishing was never. It was just literally about me wanting to finally sit down and write a story. But when I didn't die, obviously, I'm not. You don't have to pour it out, so you're not channeling me. I'm very much alive. So when I didn't die, I started thinking, well, I guess I better actually do this. I've written, so let's do this. Let's make this into a career. So I started writing the other books in the series, and while I was writing, my actual vision originally, I think, was, why don't I just write a whole bunch of books and then worry about publishing later? And then I think after I wrote Charlotte, I was like, I just need to, that's stupid. Just get the publishing started. Right. So I went ahead and decided to push it out there, and see what happens. But indie came about for a lot of reasons. But I will say the key reason was not to piggyback on Lisbeth, but independence. So, I was part of quite a few different writers groups, and those writers were with publishing houses or with agents, and hearing their, because I'd get their advice. I'd try to figure out, what's the secret to all of this? Who should I be applying to? How do I go about just getting the feel? And every single one of them was like, you need to go indie. And I'm like, oh, but no. Every one of them, go indie. And there were all kinds of reasons, but it comes down to freedom and independence. Where they can't even choose what cover they want. The publisher chooses the cover. They can't choose what edits they want to take or not take. That comes down to the publisher's editor. Where they market, how they market, comes down to the publishing company. Like everything, you're just stripped of freedom. And we were even talking a little bit about that with the Social Book Fest a few months back. Gosh, it might have been 5 years ago at this point. I don't know. It has been so long. It feels like it was 5 years ago. So a few months back, we were talking about.
I can't remember.
I think March, yeah. Where even Jana was talking about. I think somebody had asked, like, how did you name the characters? How did you decide on the names? And she had different names picked out, and her publisher changed it. Mm-hmm. And I just can't even imagine somebody saying to me, "We don't like the name Lisbeth. We're going to have to change her to, I don't know, Sally."
Yeah.
And this is a story of Sally and Sebastian. No. So I said, you know what? I'm not even going to go, after talking to all of them, I'm not even going to go that route. I am so stubbornly Lisbeth-like independent. This has to be 100% me. I want to keep everything. I want to choose the covers. I want to do everything. And it does mean a lot of marketing, because you don't have the publisher pushing the marketing. You're doing all the marketing. But as long as you stay on top of that, you end up having total freedom and independence. So it kind of depends on what you want. But that was my driving factor to go indie. And I went out of the gate with that. I never even bothered. I never even tried finding, agents or anything, because I had those guys go indie.
And you wouldn't change it for the world.
I would. Oh no, because it goes back to that same problem.
Right.
So if a publishing house were to contact me and say, we really want you, you're selling well, your books are they would fit our image, I would have to very politely decline, because it still goes back to that the same ending. As soon as I sign that contract, you now own all of it, and you can change my character names, you can cut scenes, you can choose the cover. And no, I am far too independent. And now we know the inspiration for Elizabeth here, where you're like, seeing a connection here. Are you really this stubborn and independent? Yes.
You're like, there might be some slight similarities. I'm not giving up control.
Some characteristics that overlap just a bit.
It was so much fun getting to know more about the characters and about your writing process. And I hope everyone on here learned a little bit more behind the scenes of the Earl and the Enchantress. And I hope that you all will read more of Paulett's books. If you have any suggestions of what we can do to make the book club that much better, ideas, I'd love to hear your feedback. Also, if you would like to continue on reading Paulett's books and having a discussion, let us know that too. I'm sure we can work something out so we can keep a group going to read your books, because I know you all are going to want to discuss Drake once you start reading book 2. There's going to be a lot of thoughts on Drake. Before we go...
Okay, then I have a question for you.
We'll be reading.
You answered my question.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you answered. I was going to say, and what's the book club reading next? And like telepathically, you pick it up.
Right here, if I can get my directions right. Next month, we'll be reading The Widow of Pale Harbor by Hester Fox. This is an amazing gothic-y type novel. There's lots of Poe references to it. I read this last year when it came out, and it was one of my favorite spooky kind of, I would say, cozy mystery kind of does it a disservice. If you don't are like me and you don't like the books that make you want to lock all the doors and check them 50 times and leave the lights on at night, you'll be fine. This is nothing too horribly scary, just a good gothic romance. It is set in Maine in 1846. So grab a copy of this before we start next month. We'll kind of do the same thing and formally talk about it throughout the month. And then I will be posting the date soon. I believe it's around, I'll have to double check, the end of October. I will be talking with Hester, same as I did with Paullett here. And yeah, let's keep this book club moving. There's more books planned for the rest of the year. I'm super excited. And Paullett, I will always drag her on in between to chat. If there's topics that you guys want to know too, please let us know. Paullett has a wealth of information. I'm always willing to ask her all the questions and listen to her talk. But thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Bye.